So the Chase Sapphire Reserve is one of the best premium credit cards that's out there on the market right now. But it begs the question on whether you should actually prioritize this card over another option like the Amex Platinum. And so to help answer that question, I do have a guest that's going to be coming on the channel who has a lot of experience with the Chase Sapphire Reserve. I think it'll be really cool to come hear his feedback. So without further ado, I'm going to invite him over to the call right now. Spencer, how are you doing today? How's everything going?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me on. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, no, super excited to bring you on the channel and talk everything Chase Sapphire Reserve, and all that type of stuff. Just wanted to start off, get right into it, based on a video that you created recently, where you titled it "Why I'll Never Cancel the Chase Sapphire Reserve." Could you tell everyone a little bit more about that in terms of your own personal experience, and I guess why you've come to the conclusion that this is probably going to be a long-term card in your setup going forward?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of different ways I could answer this question. I think the best way to start is just by saying, or I guess by calming everybody's nerves about me talking about Chase as some like really great lender when people are always complaining about their multipliers and all that kind of stuff as well. So I guess just to paint a picture of where I come from, to me, Chase is like the most flexible lender when it comes to
Mhm.
point redemptions and stuff like that. And I've always said that, like since the start of my channel, I've always known that you can get a good cashback rate at 1 cent per point, which is the table minimum for cashback. You can also get some boosts on your points through travel portals, as long as you have certain cards with Chase, and then you have the ability to transfer out to transfer partners with those same
Mhm.
cards. So I've always said that, and I'd heard for a long time, like I'd watch like Ben Hedges talk about how people kind of sleep on the Chase Sapphire Reserve because of that 50% points boost and stuff like that that you get through the travel portal. And in this, I guess it was past year, or maybe even 2023, whenever I upgraded to the card, I decided to just test out those theories and just see how good the card really could be. And based on the way that I travel, I'm a domestic traveler mainly, like 95% of the time I'm traveling domestically, and usually just in economy because I don't necessarily want to pay for the first class flights in the US unless it's like a really long haul flight for some reason. But in Texas, nothing is super long haul for me.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, so I decided to upgrade to it and test out that functionality, and I found out really quickly that that 50% points boost is like by far my most used redemption style.
Mhm.
So that's kind of like the main thesis for the video as to why I actually really like the card. That fact alone, that it offers me that boost and gives me a guaranteed 1.5 cent per point redemption through the Chase portal. I mean, it makes up like thousands of dollars a year for me in points that
Mhm.
I've saved by booking in that fashion rather than either through the Chase Sapphire Preferred or by transferring directly to a lot of these domestic hotels and airlines. One example that I've used in videos and in a video coming out soon too is like what you'll find is if you start diving into the transfer partner game, you'll see that domestically, if you're transferring over to an airline like United, for example, and you want to book a United flight, you're probably going to get something like 1.2 cents per point in value for those redemptions,
Mhm.
which is fine, but there are better options, right? If you go to the hotel side, book with somebody like IHG, you're looking at like half a cent per point in IHG points. So obviously, you never want to transfer your Chase points to IHG points because that's a terrible redemption rate for Chase points. But the way to get around that really simply is by having the Chase Sapphire Reserve, get that guaranteed rate through the portal, and it just keeps
Mhm.
everything like super clean, super, I guess, just like low effort, really. Like I know that I'm going to be getting a respectable redemption rate for my domestic trips through the portal. And that's like the main selling point for me. Obviously, I also talk a lot in that video about how I have the Chase Sapphire Terrace Lounge in Austin. And I think that most people should pick a luxury travel credit card based on their home airport, what
Mhm.
lounges they need access to, and the Sapphire Terrace is one that the Chase Sapphire Reserve is the only card that gets you into. So that was another selling point for me. Unfortunately, that lounge is going away in March of
Yeah.
2025, so that'll change my values a little bit. Um, so those are two big things on top of all the other benefits of it having like the $300 annual travel credit. I do use it as my main spend card. I get 3x back on dining and travel. Those are my main two spending categories usually. So it gets used a lot. I also got some like subtle value out of like the Lyft Pink benefits that it gave,
Mhm.
which came with
Mhm.
Grubhub Plus for a year. Like that was a pretty underrated perk. It also gives you Dash Pass, which I've been using lately too. So there's
Yeah.
just a lot to love with the card. I just feel like it kind of goes under people's radar a little bit because people tend to shy away from Chase, but it's been great for me for a lot of reasons.
Yeah, those are some great points. Obviously, seems like it fits your lifestyle really well with just
Mhm.
prioritizing some of the domestic travel and wanting to get that consistent value. Then obviously up till hopefully hopefully maybe they come back sometime in the future, but having the Sapphire Lounge or the Terrace Lounge in Austin as well added some value just to your personal situation. I'm just curious though, based off of how great it's been for you, do you think that there's a specific demographic of people that the Sapphire Reserve works best for? Or do you think there's, I guess, to take the reverse of that question, do you think there's a certain set of people that probably it wouldn't be a good idea to go with the Sapphire Reserve?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would definitely not say that the Sapphire Reserve is for everybody, and that's something that I
Mhm.
try to make clear in my videos. Like I always speak in my videos from personal experience. So, take everything I say with a grain of salt. It really should just be taken as a way for you to think about these credit cards rather than like just taking my word as gospel.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think the certain demographic that the card is probably for those domestic travelers that are having a hard time getting more value from their transferable currencies. Like again, it's the same thing with like Delta, as I just said with United. Like you don't really want to transfer your Amex points to Delta and get like a 1.2 cent
Hmm.
per point redemption rate when you could use those points for some international trip down the line. So what I try to do these days is save as much of my currencies as possible, like with Amex, Capital One, Citi, save those for
Hmm.
those international trips, try to get higher
Okay.
Semper Point values from them, but have my Chase points be the one that I'm constantly using and not really worrying about the Semper Point value as much. Um, because I know that's going to be like my domestic travel bank basically, and I can get a ton of
Hmm.
Chase Ink cards and keep my points topped off. So that's why I think it's great for me, and why I think it'd be great for domestic travelers, those looking to have a simple approach to just booking and knowing you're going to get a good redemption rate.
Hmm.
Not anything insane, but good.
Hmm.
As for people that it's not for, I would say it would be like not for the people that are, I guess, what I would call points maximalists, in the sense of like, if you have a really hard time redeeming your points for any less than like, 2 cents per point or whatever, specifically your Chase
Hmm.
points, which are so valuable, then the card's just not going to do much for you, because you have to be comfortable with actually using your points. And I think a lot of people that are in that like points maximalist camp are more the type that would travel internationally as much as possible in order to get the higher cent per point values through business or
Yeah.
first class flights. And that's just not me. And I've learned over the last year that's just not the demographic that I fit. And I think that's completely okay. I think that's why
Yeah.
I'm able to resonate with my audience, in a lot of ways, because not everybody can take those types of trips. Well, I do wish I could do more. And I have nothing against that type of redemption. That's just not me. And I found that the
Hmm.
Sapphire Reserve is like the best bet for the type of travel that I do. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And then just in connection with kind of going off the previous point with the Sapphire Reserve and some of those other, premium credit cards that are out there, like the Amex Platinum or Hilton Aspire, Delta Reserve, like any of those type of cards.
Mhm.
Obviously, your focus is on the Sapphire Reserve right now. Do you think there would ever be a situation where, I mean, obviously for like the year one value and getting the welcome bonus and stuff like that, but in terms of long term value, do you think you could ever imagine yourself adding a card like the Platinum and keeping it for like the next 3 to 5 years, or like the Hilton Spire, Delta Reserve? I guess the question being like, are there any other premium credit cards out there that you
Mhm.
would consider being a long term play in your setup?
Yeah, I don't see myself not trying out these other cards, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Like, I have
fair,
nothing
fair.
against testing them out, at least just for their welcome offer opportunities. Like I mentioned earlier, I think the way that I've kind of shared at least my opinion on how to pick a luxury travel credit card for you is literally based on the lounges that you have in your own home airport. For the most part,
Mhm.
we see cards like the Venture X, Amex Platinum, Chase Sapphire Reserve, the other ones you mentioned having very similar benefits in a lot of respects.
Mhm.
So, in my opinion, the only real competitive advantage that each has is access to the lounges that you prefer, basically. So
Mhm.
that's why the Chase one has worked for me, because I have that Sapphire Lounge in Austin. If I had an Amex Centurion Lounge in Austin, I would actually probably lean towards the Amex Platinum. Well, I
Mhm.
don't actually know about that because of that 50% boost. It's hard to tell. I'd probably lean
Yeah.
towards the Amex Business Platinum, honestly, because they have a very
Okay.
similar feature on the business card
Mhm.
with the 35% points rebate, but that's kind of in the weeds here. But yeah, honestly, I think it really just does come down to what lounges you need access to. Specific to the hotel and airline luxury cards, I only really see myself getting those if I frequent those companies a lot. I tend to
Mhm.
stick to more transferable currency cards, like the very general travel cards, because it gives you the most flexibility in redemption, which you
Mhm.
can see is kind of a theme for what I value in the credit card game most is really flexibility and like knowing I'm going to get a good redemption rate no matter what strategy I want to use to do that redemption. So I could see myself getting something like the Hilton Aspire if I know I'm going to have a lot of Hilton stays coming up and I want to have high status with them and those benefits. But until then, I have no big reason to do so. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's very situational. Obviously, like you have to. I think one of the biggest warnings I want to give people is that you shouldn't just choose a luxury card because everybody else says it's good, because it might be actually just not good at all for you. Even if you think you can
Yeah.
get positive value from it with all the credits on it, that if you have to force yourself to go out of your way to travel in a different fashion than you normally would or spend on credits that you normally wouldn't, that card's actually not good for you. You just got to pick what makes the most sense with your lifestyle and spending habits.
Yeah. No, I agree with you a ton about, especially about
Yeah.
like the situational stuff too, because I myself am in a little bit of a different situation. In Seattle, we have a Centurion Lounge.
Hmm.
We don't have any sort of Chase Lounge right now. I typically try to travel like once or twice per year, but those are typically like the bigger, like international type trips. So, like,
Hmm.
in terms of the value on the Sapphire Reserve, I'm probably not going to get as much through the redemption value of 1.5 cents per point through the portal. Then, like,
Right.
lounge access wise, traveling out of Seattle with having the Centurion Lounge there, makes a little bit more sense to go based off the lounge access. And I really agree with that point that I think a lot of people should be figuring out, where they travel the most or where they travel from, and seeing what makes the most sense in terms of what lounge access they have and what credit cards apply to that. And then
Hmm.
obviously also like what sort of redemptions they're making, what credits they're using, all that type of stuff. But
Yeah.
um, last question I have for you. So for the Chase Sapphire Reserve, obviously you've loved it so far. You've gotten a lot of value out of it. Just hypothetically speaking, what would Chase have to do to the Sapphire Reserve to make you want to cancel it? Like, would it be just taking away the 50% redemption boost and that would be an automatic cancel for you? Or like, what would they need to do?
Yeah. That's a tough one. I mean, obviously, if they did take that benefit away, it would not. It would have a lot less value to me. So that would be
Yeah.
a
Mhm.
pretty big hit to it. I will say though, if they had a Chase Sapphire permanent lounge in Austin and took that benefit away, I'd be more inclined to still keep the card.
Mhm.
That's like a similar argument to the Amex Platinum with a Centurion Lounge in your airport. They don't have a 50%
Right.
boost, but you can still justify it with all the other credits on it. Um, but if I did see them like raise the annual fee pretty substantially, and I don't have access to a Sapphire Lounge anymore in my home airport, that's when I have to do more effective annual fee calculations. So even if it stays exactly as it is, if they start raising the annual fee without adding benefits to it, I'd be inclined to at least consider canceling it.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I guess the other option or the other big reason as to why I wouldn't keep it anymore is if I did move to a different city and I just had no use
Mhm.
for the Chase Sapphire lounges or anything like that. Um, yeah, with that high of an annual fee, even though I have that 50% boost, it'd be debatable whether or not that would be giving me positive value because it's more of the 50% boost is more of like a soft value. It's not giving me any cash, back into my pocket or anything like that. The way in
Yeah.
which it actually gives me value, just to stop dancing around the idea, is it saves me points that I would have had to use otherwise. So like
Right.
the way I did my effective annual fee calculation in that video about why I'll never cancel the Chase Sapphire Reserve is that I took the difference in points that it would have cost me to book each trip I did this year with the Chase Sapphire Preferred versus the Reserve, and then calculated like a cent per point value on those points. And like
Mhm.
I said, it came out to like over $1,000 in value that I saved by doing that. So when it comes to calculating an effective annual fee, if you don't value that as highly, it literally
Yeah.
is like a null point. Like you wouldn't even want the Sapphire Reserve. So it comes down to a lot of different factors. But I think the main things would be if I never have access to a Chase Lounge, really, that's going to
Mhm.
be a big hit. Or if they took away like the 50% points boost, those would be like the
Yeah.
two biggest. Yeah.
And I like what you said there too, because I'm a big fan of tangibly valuing every benefit. So even if it's not like a straightforward, oh, $300 annual travel credit, that's really
Hmm.
easy to value. But even if it's lounge access or the 50% redemption value, I think it's important to, okay, like how many times am I using the lounge per year? Okay,
Yeah.
how much value am I getting for each lounge visit? Here's like my total value. 50%
Hmm.
redemption value, how many points am I actually saving? Which I know you've done a lot of that stuff with,
Yeah.
talking about the videos of where you've talked about all your redemptions for the year and the amount of value you've gotten. I
Yeah.
think it's really important for everyone to do that too.
Yeah, I think you can kind of create your own like hierarchy of benefits in a sense. Like what I realized in doing exactly what you just outlined is that I use lounges what I think is very frequently. Like I use it basically every time I go to the airport. But at the end of the day, how much value does that actually save me? You know, I did like a calculation with like a average drink cost of like $7.50 in the airport, calculated
Mhm.
out all the drinks that I bought or, you know, got in the lounge for free. And then came out with the final value. And while that value was like fairly high, it was a lot less than I thought. And it's even less than that whenever you consider the fact that I wouldn't go buy every single one of those drinks
Yeah,
if I was
right.
in the if I
Uh-huh.
was just in the airport. Like I probably wouldn't buy any. I would just be like, nah, I'm just gonna save my money.
Chill. Yeah.
So yeah, that did open my eyes a lot to realizing that that 50% points boost gives me the highest possible value from the card possible, which means that the lounge access is less of a necessity for me.
Mhm.
And we also see these days that lounge access in general is not the best anymore with
Right,
how long you
right.
have to wait for them and stuff. So luckily that's not really the case with the Sapphire Terrace Lounge in Austin, but again, that's going away. So we'll see. But yeah,
Yeah.
I do think it's important to everybody's going to value each perk differently, not only just each card differently. So you
Mhm.
have to really think about these things, you know,
Yeah.
introspectively.
This is kind of a separate video too, but it just made me think. I know Stan recently made a video where he was talking about lounge access, and in some ways, especially if you're traveling internationally, the lounge access should be valued based off of your business class ticket and how you're getting access that way, because those are going to be the better lounges anyways for the most part,
Right.
and stuff like that. Whereas domestically traveling and using a lounge, if you have to wait in a line for an hour, in some cases, all right, I'm going
Yeah.
to be like, all right, it's not worth it. I'm not going to even try. So that's
Hmm.
definitely an important thing to consider as well, just as lounges progress. And, we'll see if there's any sort of additional restrictions or anything that's added in the future.
Right.
But yeah, it's interesting to think about. But yeah,
Yeah.
thank you so much for talking about the Sapphire Reserve. I think it'll be really
Hmm.
important, especially to hear your perspective, because I'm someone who, at least on this topic specifically, has a little bit of a different situation and different perspective on it. So it's really interesting for people to hear from your perspective and some of the things I've said in the past as well. And then make a decision based off of what they typically do, how they travel, and what cards
Hmm.
make the most sense for them. But
Yeah.
thanks so much for coming on the channel, Spencer. It was great to have you, and I hope you all that are watching this video have a good rest of your day. So peace.